Well, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, so I've got four books out there. And my newest one, I guess I should say, just came out in May of 2024, and that's called City of Books. And that was a real passion project that I did over COVID. It's loosely inspired by a famous bookstore in Portland called Powell's Books. I don't know if you're familiar, but they take up a whole city block. I think it's something like 68,000 square feet, and it is literally like the Eiffel Tower of the Pacific Northwest. When people get off the plane and they're a reader, they want to go there first. Over the pandemic in real life, they shut down and they didn't know if they'd be able to open again because Portland was really going through it. So I was devastated along with so many of its fans. And so I imagined a story as if a fictional bookstore had to close, but the employees decided to move in and save it. So that's what City of Books is about. It's kind of a love letter to indie bookstores everywhere because I just adore indie bookstores. So that one came out, and it's new, but it's also so close to my heart because it was based sort of loosely on real life.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. We're going to have a little bit of in-class time today. If you're an author, fiction author specifically, and you're like, you know what, I really don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I wish there was somebody who could help me. Well, I found her, and she's going to help you today. We're going to do a little bit of that in our opening here as we start off the show, but you're going to love what Nicole brings to this world, and we'll have links for all of her stuff. She's got a great website. I have it up while we're chatting, and Nicole's going to help you as a writer. She's going to help you with your story and help you to chase your dream to be an author. And as well, she's an author herself. So not only does she help people, she does it herself, which makes it even better. Nicole, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Dave. It's so nice to be here, and it's nice to talk about all things books.
Right? This is the perfect place to do this. I'm so glad to have you here. Tell us, Nicole, where are you in this big world of ours?
I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so I am right smack in the middle of Oregon. And we are having a change of weather here, which is kind of fun. I know that there's all kinds of weather all over the country, but I'm a big fan of fall because all the trees are orange around here right now.
Beautiful. Yeah, here in Canada, they're just starting to go, and where I am, and you can feel a chill in the evening. You get that sweater weather you hear people talk about all the time, right? And everybody's got a pumpkin spice something in their hand. So, I love that time of year. It's good.
Me too. And it's good writing season. I always say that people have different seasons to write, and I think fall is a fabulous time to do that.
Right? Because
Yeah.
for those who have small children, they're back in school possibly, or we're back into some sort of routine. And in the
Yes.
routine, you can find those times to carve out moments to start writing. So yeah, good time to write a book.
That's exactly right. Yes. And it's just cozy weather. People like to be inside and really just sort of think about creating that space to be creative, inside their home. And it's just a good inspiration.
Good. I wonder how many, I'd like to get this stat somewhere. How many books were written with a cup of pumpkin spice latte? I wonder what the number is, because I think it's pretty high.
Yeah, I bet it is. It's really important. I mean, it sounds so trivial, but to have your favorite drink with you, it's like a reward for doing the hard work. So I actually think there's something to that.
Okay. Well, that's something we can research and come back on. I'd like that. So we'll put some effort and time into that. Nicole, as we're starting, again, I mentioned your website's up in front of me. Let's just start there. Take us through your website, because there's so many great tools for authors and stuff on here. I love your website. It's beautiful. Can you kind of take us through a little bit for a new visitor to your site?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, if you go to my site, the first thing I talk about is helping writers shed that self-doubt. And the reason why I say that is because I've been a writer myself. I started this journey in a bubble, kind of in isolation, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. And what I was craving was someone to help me shed that self-doubt, to empower me with the tools and the information, but also walk alongside me, be my strategist, my co-cheerleader, expert in my genre, potentially, my developmental editor, all of those things. So when people come to my site, I want to let them know, A, you're not alone. B, you don't have to work in a bubble. And C, there are so many amazing resources out there, whether it's from me or another book coach or editor, in order to really help get that story out of your head and onto the page. So that's my goal. And when people ask me what I'm doing these days, I always say I'm serving my younger self. And that means I very much, as a younger writer, wanted sort of a book coach to be with me And so now I'm doing that in my day job as a book coach.
Beautiful. Okay, so where does that, what's the seed of self doubt that you think a lot of
Yeah.
authors wrestle with?
I think we all wrestle with it. I've got 4 books out, but I still wrestle with it. It is, who do I think I am to write a book and other people will buy it, right? And I know all kinds of artists go through this, whether you're a singer, an actor, a painter, a sculptor. We all have that moment where we think we very much want to follow that passion, but who do I think I am? And gosh, this is very vulnerable to put my story, a lot of times with personal reflections, on the page for the greater public to read and scrutinize. So it is sort of this hurdle to overcome of imposter syndrome, self-doubt. Do I have what it takes to be a real writer?
Who was it for you in the early days of writing that told you you could do this? Was it self from yourself, or was it an
Yeah.
external person speaking into you saying, Nicole, you got something special here. You should do this? Who was it for you?
I think like a lot of writers, I pushed things down for so many years. I very much wanted to be a novelist, but I just kept pushing it down because I didn't think I was ready or cool enough or edgy enough or whatever it was to be that great writer. A funny story is I went to a big writing conference, I want to say in 2012. And I remember there was about 300 of us sitting in a ballroom as the conference director was speaking to us. And this was at the end of 3 days together of writing and taking workshops and networking. And he said to the huge room of hundreds of people, he said, I'm going to be honest, only 2 or 3 of you are ready to even try and publish your work. And talk about a collective gasp in the room.
Wow.
And that was really eye-opening for me because it divided the room. There were the people that just felt defeated and said, I'm never going to make it, and gave up. In fact, one of the writers I was traveling with did that very thing. She never wrote again. And then there were people like me that said, just watch me. And so I knew I had to work on my craft. So I went back and took courses and read books and studied and really practiced. I wrote a practice novel that lives in a drawer because I just wanted to prove to myself I had what it took to fill a full-length novel manuscript. But you really have to have what I call tenacity, that stick-to-itiveness. That kind of supersedes talent in a lot of ways. If you stick to it, if you have tenacity and you keep showing up to the work, that's going to take you even farther because let's face it, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't show up to the page, it's not going to do much for you.
Yeah. And the idea that, like, who would ever read my words? Who cares what I have to say or what I have to write? Somebody can write a book like your book, but no one can write your book. You're the only one who can.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no one else who can do this, right?
that's exactly right. We all have our own authentic lens from which we're telling a story, and that's what makes us all worthy, unique, and capable of telling a story.
That's really interesting. And I think inspiration taps you on the shoulder once in a while and comes to
Yeah,
you and says, hey, Nicole, are you ready for this? And you're not. Just go moves on to someone else, and someone else will pick it up and carry it on. But it's being open in that moment to go, hey, I got an idea. I
yeah,
think it's got legs. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to just try and see what
right.
happens, right? And that's where somebody like you coming in to help them to kind of go from that concept to reality. Is
Yeah.
that kind of what do you expect from somebody who comes to your site and wants to work with you for the first time? Are you expecting a fully fleshed out idea and all the main points and the table of contents? Or are you coming with like, "Hey, just come with the idea and let's work together?"
Right. It's a great question. I have people that come to me in all phases, but I really encourage people to get some sort of structured help at the get-go if they can, whether that's a writing friend or a critique partner or someone like me, a book coach, because what you want to do is if you just have a seed of an idea, you want to make sure that you're building a good foundation for your story. And a really easy analogy is just think of a house, right? You want to pour the foundation before you start framing. You wouldn't start with just the windows because you have a pretty scene, right? Really want a strong foundation. So book coaches and developmental editors will help writers structure their story. There's one thing to have a story idea, but there's another thing to say, well, how do you even write a scene? And how do I make a plot work and have narrative drive? So when people come to me with just a seed of an idea, I start way back. We zoom out and I say, what's your message? What are you trying to say? How would you like your reader to feel by the time they reach the end? And it sounds so simple, but it's something that will inform every single chapter you write. And then we kind of go from there. But it's really important for a writer to identify, well, what am I trying to say? And I always say, put it in a bumper sticker, right? Because Sometimes, something more general has universality and it can reach a wider audience. So someone could say, I'd love to write a book that's all about laughter heals, or medicine, laughter is the best medicine, right?
Yeah,
Or healing through laughter. Or someone could say, I'd love to write a book about how people aren't always what they seem. Maybe that's a suspense or a thriller. So just having that bumper sticker message, you'd be surprised how far that takes you and informs your writing process.
that is beautiful. That can be used for so much.
Yeah.
Like, I work with podcasters and they're trying to describe their podcast. And I'm like, turn it into a bumper sticker. Like, that
Yeah.
is so good.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you credit, but I'm going to steal that. I love that.
Well, that's actually from my mentors. So Jenny Nash was the one who trained me because I'm a certified book coach, and she came up
Good.
with that. So
That's
I'm
great.
going to credit Jenny Nash all day long.
All right, Jenny, thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to turn the podcast over to you. I'm going to
Okay.
go sit with the audience,
Okay.
and we're going to go listen. But I'm a new author. I'm coming to you. You have on your website, you have a free guide that we can get
Yeah.
talking about some essential strategies to help you level up your novel. Could you
Yeah.
share some of that? You don't have to share all five because we want to
Sure.
go get the copy ourselves. But can you, in this moment, kind of take over the podcast and share with us some of those essentials that we need to have in place? Okay. I'm going
Sure.
to go sit with everybody else. I'm going to grab some popcorn and enjoy this. But
Okay.
it's your podcast now, Nicole. So please take us through some of these steps.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because that's a really nice container, right? For if you're just starting out. So I talk about those five essential steps. And, one thing that I want to point out that's not even in that, but it's so good for writers to know wherever you are in the process is it's also about healthy writing habits. So this isn't sort of a hard charging, gaining sort of thing. It's about enjoying the writing process. So think about what's worked for you in the past when you actually enjoyed writing, whether that just be a 5-minute journal entry or maybe writing a quick short story, whatever you've done in the past, think about what's worked. So maybe that's about, like we said, creating that beautiful space where you get your favorite drink and you turn off all your devices and just say, okay, I just want to do this for 20 minutes and see what it feels like. Start small. Create a good habit. Show up to the page where you don't have distractions. And then if you want to download my novel writing guide, some of the things I talk about are what's your message, which we just talked about. What are you trying to say about the human condition? That's really what your book is about, no matter the genre. So think about that. And then the next thing is let's talk about your main character, which is your protagonist. What do they want? Because what happens in a novel, no matter the genre, they want something and then something standing in the way of them getting it. So really think about what does my character want? And you could go deeper there. You could say, let's talk about the external and the internal. Maybe I just have a character who wants a promotion in his job. That's a thing. That's an external thing, right? But what's the internal factor driving that? And that's probably they want to be validated. They want to be seen. They want to be someone of worth. So those two things, knowing those will really inform your character's journey throughout the whole book. And then the fun part is what's standing in their way? What kind of obstacles can I throw at my protagonist to keep them or slow them down from getting what they want? Yeah.
Okay. Those are great. Again, there's the situation, but then there's how they're feeling, how they're reacting to
Yeah.
the situation. All of that stuff needs to be uncovered as well to bring us into the story. And I
Right.
think those are good points. The one question I like to ask authors when they come on my show, especially people in fiction, is if you could bring in your main character
Yeah.
from your novel, sit them down across the desk from you, and ask them a question that you don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
What would you ask them? And the idea is I want authors to be curious about their own worlds that they're building.
Right.
And I've actually had authors kind of go, wow, well, I never really knew what their connection was with their mother. Like,
Yeah.
why was that so important to them? I don't know the answer to that. Which
Yeah.
then sparks them to go, hang on, there's an idea for something I can do next,
Yeah.
right? To go down that path I didn't even think about. So
Yeah.
talk about curiosity as a writer. How
Yeah.
important is it to develop curiosity?
It's very important, and that's brilliant that you brought that up because the exercise you're suggesting actually informs two different things of a story. The first is, like you said, figure out their backstory because what's happened to your character in the past, whether it's a relationship with their mother or they've been bullied in school, whatever it is, that is actually informing every decision and every action they're making moving forward. So throughout the story, their decision-making process of do I go path A or path B is informed by their backstory. So that's brilliant. And then another way, I love how you said, sit your character down across the table is what's their voice? It's so important to know, is it stiff and formal? Is it casual and full of slang? Is it conversational? Is it stilted? Is it guarded? Because that's something that writers forget is what is the voice? So think about your character sitting down at a table over a cup of coffee, sharing a story. What's their authentic cadence? What's their authentic language? That's a really good exercise to do that.
And just the idea, like as soon as they walk through the room, how do you react? Are you nervous? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's my character, whatever, fill in the blank. It's them. Or are they happy? Do they light up the room? Do they make the room dark? Do you feel, are they ominous? Are they intriguing? Are you like curious? Are you afraid? Like, what is that? And bring that into your writing as well. Like
Yeah.
that will also help us as readers to connect with them beyond words on a piece of paper, right?
So true. I love that you said all that. It's so important because we know that in our head, but a lot of times we forget to include it on the page.
Yeah, right. And so if we can uncover that, I think it's going to make us a better writer.
Right, right.
Okay. So there you go. What else is missing from this? I can tell you're like, your mind is calculating as we're talking, but what else are we missing as a component to this that kind of ties all this together for an author?
Well, so you want to have narrative drive. You want to have something that happens in the plot that always is moving the story forward. Something that we all do as writers, and we don't mean to, is a lot of times we tread water in a chapter or two. We don't go anywhere, and that kind of bores the reader, right? So if you want to think about what happens, the good formula to understand how you can make your narrative drive move forward is say, because this happens, then that has to happen next. And that will really help have one thing lead into the next, and not do what I call that treading water thing. So you want to think about the plot points, you want to think about narrative drive, and then you want to find out at the very end of each scene or in the middle of the scene, it doesn't really matter, but how in the world is that character reacting to all the things happening in the plot? We don't want to just have the plot happen to the character, we want to have them react to it. And that really shows what your character's made of. It shows what's important to them, what's meaningful to them. So it all kind of ties together. And I think that starting out thinking about your character, thinking about narrative drive, thinking about your message, thinking about setting and dialogue, all those things, even if you have just one bullet point of an idea for each category, you're really starting off strong as opposed to just sitting down to the page saying, I have no idea what I'm writing about. Let's just see what shows up today.
All right. I love when we talk about success because success leaves clues, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about somebody that's come to work with you, who's come with an idea, and
Yeah.
where they are now. Okay, does somebody
Yeah.
pop up in your mind that you can kind of share as like as an example of, what it's like to work with somebody like you and the success that they've seen by working with someone
Yeah.
like you?
Yeah, it's really fun. And again, it goes back to tenacity. So I've had a range of writers work with me. Some of them are very excited in the beginning, but they fizzle out because they just get in their own head. But then I have a bunch of writers that keep showing up to the work. So what typically happens, and I'm thinking of four of my clients right now that are going together to the Kauai Writers Conference next month because they're going to pitch their work to the top agents. And I'm so excited for them because they all came to me with just a seed of an idea and they had zero clue how to write a book. And this was, gosh, I only worked with them for, 6 months. And so this is like 9 months later, they're ready to pitch their work. So they have worked and worked and worked. So they come to me, we talk about all the fundamentals. I give some good workshops and teachings of how to actually write a book. And then, chapter by chapter, chunk by chunk, they work on a draft. And then with me, I actually do developmental edits along the way and say, okay, let's go back and strengthen this. This isn't making sense, or this is your superpower, because I always believe a writer has a superpower. Let's lean into this. So those four particular writers that are going to a conference next month, they are probably on, draft 5 or 6, but they've worked and worked and worked. They have gotten together with one another because I introduce them to one another and they are trading pages and giving each other feedback, which is really exciting. And they've polished their work to the best of their ability. And now they're ready to go pitch literary agents and go for a book deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so working with you is not just you alone, one on one. There's community aspect to this as
Yeah.
well. Why is community so important for a young author or a new author just starting their journey? Why is that so important?
Community is everything. I mean, honestly, that's the only thing that sustained me early in my career. You need people who will understand what you're going through on a mindset level because it is such a solitary sport. And it's hard to just, tell your loved one or a friend who doesn't even maybe even read, oh gosh, it was so hard today. And this is my struggle that happened with my manuscript. They don't really understand.
No.
So it's great to have that community to kind of have that sharing aspect, but also they're excited to most of the time trade pages and give each other feedback, which is so powerful because you're already talking to book lovers, right? So book lovers want to read other people's work, they want to champion it. And also just having people's experiences like, hey, I noticed you went with a small press. Could I hear about your experience? Because maybe that's what I want to do too. It's really a sharing of information, a sharing of motivation, a sharing of inspiration. And all the people that I have, networked with and been in community with over the past 12 years, I still talk to all the time because those are my book people, right?
Okay. One thing I've been noticing in the space is I'm getting these pop-ups on social media saying that I can click one button, AI is going to write a book for me, and I can have it on Amazon this afternoon. And I'm like, part of me is like a little offended by that because it seems to be reducing the need for amazing authors like yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm kind of encouraged by it in a weird way
Mm,
because if that becomes a standard way of writing a book, that it's going to be a lot of vanilla in the
yeah.
space. There's going to be a lot of books that have no substance, no depth, no personal stories, no Nicole. There's going to be no
Yeah.
Dave in these books. They're going to be
Yeah.
just a bunch of surface stuff. And I think that as AI abounds, there's an opportunity for us to stand out and share our unique story, our unique
Mhm.
voice that can't be duplicated by a click of a button. So,
Yeah.
are you concerned at all about the AI space for authors at all? And what's your reaction and how do we move forward through this?
Yeah, it's like everything in publishing, the AI aspect is ever changing. I think it was a year and a half ago, I actually had a publisher reach out to me and ask if I would be a freelance developmental editor for them, for their authors. And then I started reading the email and it said, but every single one of our authors is AI. And I thought, yeah, that's not for me. That
Hmm.
wasn't something I was excited about, but it shows you that they still needed a human touch on that to make sure that the story actually worked. It couldn't just all be AI. They needed a human developmental editor to put it all together and make sure that it was something that could engage a reader. So that's one side of it. The other side is unfortunately it's dividing the writing community quite a bit right now. I mean, with the NaNoWriMo sort of scandal coming out, and some other self-publishing groups are saying, yeah, when you get writer's block, just have AI write the whole draft and then you go back and add your human touches to it. And
Hmm.
then there's people who say absolutely not, like I'll never even think about using AI. So it is kind of a divided world right now. My opinion is a lot like yours that we each have our own authentic lens from which to tell a story, and you just can't replace that. I mean, if you go on AI right now, which I do, I actually have them help me with my podcast transcripts and things like that. Um, if you said, hey, write a newsletter for me or write a short story for me, you'll realize it's very stilted and it doesn't really sound all that great.
Yeah.
So we're not even close to being there yet. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely something that's coming fast and furious down the road. And I think that unfortunately it's going to divide a lot of authors.
Hmm. All right. So you mentioned podcast, and I love the word podcast when it comes from a guest. Talk about your show because I want people to come and listen to you. Hey, we are a podcast about authors, and you
Yeah.
have a show. So please tell us about your show as well.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Steps to Story, and it's really for fiction writers, and it's all about how to write. It's insight from the publishing world, it's insight from other book coaches, it's insight from other authors, and a lot of it's solo episodes from me, just really giving kind of what I call free workshops on how to write your book.
Nice. How long have you been doing the show?
I've only been doing less than a year. So I started last February.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you enjoying it?
I love it. Honestly, I mean, you obviously love doing podcasting because you have
Too
multiple
many.
amazing podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Too
But
many.
I really love the idea that someone could be doing the dishes or walking their dog and listening to, tips and strategy and inspiration on how to become a better author. For me, I listen to podcasts all the time. I mean, I just can't absorb them fast enough. So
Mhm.
I'm looking for someone like me who loves to listen and also kind of multitask at the same time.
So as you listen to this podcast, there'll be a link in the notes to go right to Steps to Story podcast. Please go and subscribe and follow and share and do all the things. And make sure you listen to every episode completely to the end. That makes everybody happy. But please, everyone, go do that because you just found a new podcast to fall in love with. And I love that. So
That's so
great.
nice. Thank you.
Now talk about your own author journey. Let's get a little selfish here. You've also
Okay.
written as well. You don't just help people, you do it yourself. Tell us about what you've been writing and let's open the world to our readers that are here looking for their next favorite author.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, so I've got four books out there. And my newest one, I guess I should say, just came out in May of 2024, and that's called City of Books. And that was a real passion project that I did over COVID. It's loosely inspired by a famous bookstore in Portland called Powell's Books. I don't know if you're familiar.
Hmm,
But they take up a whole city block. I think it's something like 68,000 square feet, and it is literally like the Eiffel Tower of the Pacific Northwest. When people get off the plane and they're a reader, they want to go there first.
nice.
So over the pandemic in real life, they shut down and they didn't know if they'd be able to open again because Portland was really going through it. So I was devastated along with so many of its fans. And so I imagined a story as if a fictional bookstore had to close it, but the employees decided to move in and save it. So that's what City of Books is about. It's kind of a love letter to indie bookstores everywhere because I just adore indie bookstores. So that one came out and it's new, but it's also so close to my heart because it was based sort of loosely on real life.
What are you most proud about that book? What is the one thing you're like, what's your
Yeah.
bumper sticker for that book? Come on.
Yeah, my bumper sticker for that was that with community, we can solve big things. I really
Mm,
thought that that was a time in isolation, right? I told you I wrote that over COVID when we were all very isolated. And I really wanted to remind people that community is so important. And so the book really is about people working together to save something. So it's all about community.
mm, okay. How long did that one take to write then? Did you write it all the way through COVID and into like most recent then?
No, I actually wrote it very quickly.
Okay.
I wrote the first draft in 3 months, which is pretty fast, but then it was a mess.
Mm,
So I worked on different drafts, and then I had my own book coach because I definitely believe in having someone else help me. And so she helped me get that kind of nailed, and my agent liked it. And then we didn't, decide to go out with it for a while later because I was still working on iterations of it.
okay. Excellent. Um, are you working on new projects still? You have things coming out down the road for yourself as an author?
Yeah, I actually don't. To be honest with you, I'm loving book coaching so much more right now because it's
Good.
so fulfilling and I really like being with other authors. So I'm just leaning fully into book coaching right now.
Excellent. It's great. How many authors do you work at a given time, roughly?
Yeah, this summer was a doozy. I worked with 18 authors, which meant I was reading
Wow.
18 manuscripts at one time, which was almost too much. So I really like to do a little bit less than that. Maybe 12 authors at a time is okay. It depends on if they're working in a group or if they're working one-on-one with me. It just depends. And it's like everything is a season, right? So September, everybody wants to think about their book. January 1st, everybody wants to think about their book, so there's definitely seasons to it. Um, but it just kind of ebbs and flows.
In podcasting world, we have people asking, when's the best time to start and launch a podcast? When's the
Yeah.
best time to write and publish a book? Is there a time of year that's probably
Yeah.
preferred or is it really open?
Well, writing is open. You can do that
Okay.
whenever it fits into your life, but there are seasons to either self-publish or pitch literary agents so you can get a traditional book deal. So I would say if you're out there thinking about either one, it's hard over election season. People
Yeah.
are very distracted. It's also very hard to do over any kind of a holiday because people sort of shut down shop and they're distracted as well. So really just think if I take out the holidays and I take out maybe a big peak summer vacation time. Like I know a lot of literary agents like to travel in August, so they're not necessarily reading through their slush pile. If you think of it that way, then all the other seasons are definitely fair game.
Okay, and let's talk about those indie bookstores again. Let's
Yeah.
shine a light on them. In our world of one click add to cart, get it
Yeah.
the next day type things, it's very convenient to use those sites, and they have helped a lot of authors to get
Yeah.
out there, which is great. But
Yeah.
the beautiful indie bookstore, when you walk in and you hear that little ding bell on the door and the smell of all that paper and books and
Yeah.
stuff in one place, the comfy chair and the little fireplace, and
Yeah.
a generous, kind person greets you. Talk about why we need these places still in this world.
Yeah.
Like, what is it about that really helps all of authors kind of up their game and find that support in an indie bookstore space? Why do we
Yeah.
need these places so much?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is something that we need to kind of fight to save the indie bookstores. I talked about this at a book event I did in the spring, and I said the reason why one of the reasons why I love either a library or an indie bookstore is because think about there's not that many places where you can walk inside and they say, we don't care what type of person you are, what your interests are, whether you're this kind of person or that kind of person, we have a shelf for you. We have a space for
Mm.
you. We have a category for you. You are welcome. So to me, it is one of the most inclusive places you can be is a bookstore or a library because they literally say we have something for you. No matter where you think you fit in or don't fit in, you're welcome here. And we've got stories for you. And we'd love to have you sit down and read for a while or talk to another patron or talk to another author, come to a book event. It's all free. So to me, the events are free, the books aren't free.
Yeah.
But to me, it really kind of reminds people there is a space for you if you love stories. And that you cannot do on Amazon.com. I love Amazon. I love ebooks. I read on my Kindle and I read paperbacks. So and I actually listen to Audible too. So it's a healthy sort of balance between all the different kinds of ways of getting a book, but there's nothing that's going to replace that indie bookstore.
And for the authors, then, to go do some signings, go spend some time
Yeah.
on site, in store, meeting
Yeah.
people who read your book one on one. You can't do that online in the same
No.
way. Like, you can actually have a conversation with the person who's holding your book, eagerly asking, Nicole, will you sign this? Like, I can't believe I'm
Yeah.
getting to meet you. This is so amazing, right?
Yeah.
There's something special about that that can't be duplicated anywhere else. So go do those book signings. Come on.
Absolutely. It's so worth it. And I think that sometimes readers are a little nervous to ask questions or approach someone. And that the truth is that authors are thrilled to talk to anyone that's a reader because that's why they're there. So go and do it.
Excellent. Good advice all around. We're going to wrap up here in a moment. Nicole, again, take us to your website as well. There's links there for your podcast. We can go listen. But take us to your website. What do you want us to go first and look at? Where we head as a new person to your site?
Okay, great. So my website is NicoleMeier.com, and that's with an I. And really, the first thing you can do is say, okay, what are the freebies that Nicole has so I can just get a flavor? So there is a free guide, like you said, download the free guide. The podcast episodes, like I say, I really look at those as free mini workshops. So listen to the podcast episodes, jump on my newsletter list. Those I send out a lot of good free insight and updates and offers. And then you can kind of go from there if you decide you really do want support on your book. You can watch some of my do-it-yourself courses, which are quick and fast and easy, or you can work with me one-on-one. I have these things called VIP days where we can work together for an afternoon. And then I also have a second business with a partner called bookworks.co, and that's all about helping authors do their platforms and pitch literary agents.
Awesome. I'll put a link to that as well in the show notes. That's great. As we close off, Nicole, I'm curious to know if you could write a bumper sticker for authors in general, the whole community. Big task, big ask of you to write a bumper sticker for the author community. What could be something you would suggest? What if you suggested bumper stickers you could suggest to the whole author community itself? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, one of the big things I always say is tell the story that's on your heart. You know, That would be the bumper sticker I would hand to someone. If someone says, I just need to write what's on trend. I just need to write what's selling. I don't really buy that. I don't think that's a good strategy. Instead, I'd say write the story that's on your heart because that's worthy, that's of importance, and that's authentic to you.
And if we were distracted by anything in the author space, that's you kind of pull people away from and say, that's really interesting, but I really need you to focus. What are some of those distractions that we need to avoid and need to
Yeah.
focus on writing? What are those distractions?
There's a lot of distractions. Know who you are, what kind of person you are, what kind of author you are. There's a lot of noise right now from big, sort of generic, quick fix writing programs that make me a little nervous because I'm seeing a lot of writers come to me and say, they told me I was ready, but we look at the manuscript and it's a mess. So kind of those quick fix promises, or it's kind of like they say, well, make $1 million in 30 days. It's like, be a little wary of that. There's a lot of ads going on right now on Facebook and social media. So just be a little scrutinizing with what's promising you what, and go with your instinct. If you feel like this writing group or this coach or this writing partner is more aligned with you, then listen to your gut. So that's a distraction I see happening right now.
And one last thing, Nicole, as we wrap up, my mind goes back in our conversation to that conference when that person got up and said only a small percentage of the authors here are going to be successful. You mentioned somebody that was with you or in your circle that did not come back to writing.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that we have listeners who feel like they're at that moment. They're like, forget it. There's no point to this. I'm not going to do this. Could
Yeah.
you please, before they leave the table and feeling like they're not going to be able to be successful,
Yeah.
could you had a different approach. Can you please speak to that person before they leave the room? I want to
Yeah.
encourage them to stay with this. What do you say to them?
Yeah. Great. Great that you brought that up. So I would definitely say to them, you are not too late. You are not too early. You are right on time. There is always room for growth. There's always room to add layers to your manuscript. There's always room to strengthen it. There's always room to improve it. Just start, even if it's 15 minutes a day, just start writing. And you can strengthen your process and get there. All you have to do is show up and make a promise to yourself as a writer, and it will go from there. I promise.
Well, great advice. I love how we've wrapped this all around and
Good.
come right back again. It's great to have you on here, Nicole. And I'm excited to share your podcast with other authors that reach out to me and go, Dave, I need another show. Obviously, I'm going to send them to you and to your website. If you're a new author and you're looking to get support, you're looking for someone who is going to be in your corner to help you, Nicole's there for you. Definitely reach out. Links in the show notes. Again, Nicole, thank you so much for making time to be on the show. And congratulations on all the great things you do to help other authors. I know it comes from a good place and you really want to see them succeed as an author. So thank you for making that space for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. This was a really thoughtful and great conversation. I appreciate it.
Excellent. All the information, everyone, as always, in the show notes. Please go through, link through, and connect with Nicole. She'd love to meet you and hear your voice and connect with you about your project. Thanks, Nicole. Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun. Well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote what your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.